Here with us now to discuss this potential move is Pastor J.R. Forasteros of Catalyst Community Church in Dallas. Pastor, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you, Nick. It is an honor to be with you.
I have to tell you, I grew up where we did do Bible study and prayer in class, and I understand that it makes a lot of people uncomfortable right now, and I'm sure you understand why some are uncomfortable with this. Where do you stand on this move, and why do you believe that there's opposition to having Bible stories or prayer in class?
Well, I think the biggest opposition comes from the fact that in public schooling, we cannot be assured that every single student in the classroom is part of some Christian denomination. In fact, quite the opposite. We are guaranteed that that's not the case. And so requiring students who do not belong to Christian denominations to participate in Christian instruction is, I think, unjust. And I think a lot of people are against that. I myself, obviously, I'm a pastor. I have a pretty strong bias towards the Bible, but I would prefer that children who are in public schooling either receive no specific religious instruction or something that is representative of a large number of religious traditions.
And we're talking about something maybe more in lines, less Bible-based and more golden rule. Is that kind of where you're headed there with that?
Not even necessarily. I don't think we necessarily have to boil it down to only the things that all or most religions have in common. But if we're going to be talking about liberty, for instance, and we want to talk about the story of the Exodus and the liberation of the slaves from Egypt, maybe we can also talk about some other religions and the sort of liberation narratives that they have as well, so that the default assumption that is communicated to the students is not that one particular religion is the default assumption for Americans, because that's not the case. I don't know that it's ever been the case.
I don't know that it's ever been the case either, but I can tell you, in a moment of full disclosure, I didn't know that there was anything other than Father, Son, Holy Ghost until much later, and you realize, whoa, there are other religions out there? And so I can understand why parents may, who did not grow up with that same structure, particularly friends of mine who are either Jewish or Muslim, clearly would have had a problem with that, and as many of the parents would now. Will the Teachers Association be successful in thwarting this effort, do you believe, or is the need and desire amongst the community greater than the opposition against it?
I am worried that the Teachers Association will not be successful, in part because I don't think that the legislators who are behind this push are being transparent and honest. They're saying, public-facing, that this is about cultural education, and they're not wrong. To understand a lot of works of American literature, it's helpful to have some literacy in the Bible. If you're going to read Flannery O'Connor, for instance, or John Steinbeck. But what they're saying behind closed doors, and you can look at the Texas GOP platform that they just passed for 2024, is that they're saying we want our schools to teach Christianity and the Bible. So it's not equitable in the way that they're saying public facing. And I think until our lawmakers are more honest about that, the nice public facing rhetoric that they're using is going to be enough to allow folks who want to vote for it to justify it to themselves, as though they're not actually being discourteous to their neighbors. They're doing what's good for all of the kids. And I would just prefer that if we're going to do this, we all be honest about our positions so that we can have an honest conversation instead of one that's hidden behind subterfuge.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you believe that it's possible to have a moderate amount or pre-approved Christian-based curriculum? And again, I'm wondering if there is a space for it, or is there an opportunity to have it as an extracurricular activity? Because we're talking about students who are of an age who may not even know that they have an option to be in or not included in that type of teaching.
So I'll be really honest, Nick. I don't know that I want public school teachers that I don't know teaching the kids in my community Bible stories, because I don't know what translation they're using, and there are translations out there that are misogynist and that are pretty damaging. I don't know what kind of understanding they have of ancient Near Eastern mythology or ancient Near Eastern letter writing or Roman Empire politics, all of those kinds of things that go into teaching a Bible story. And it doesn't matter if you're teaching it to kindergartners or to seniors in high school. The educator, I think, needs to understand those things to be able to be responsible with the material. And I don't know that we need to expect public school teachers to do that.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.